Welcome to Be the 90. Thank you for coming back again today. As many of you have discussed and wanted me to cover, how do you retain and get good tenants for your commercial properties? One of the things that we look at, and one of the most important aspects, is to have a strategy in place as to what the value of your property is and what a good lease rate is for both you and for the prospective tenant, so that having that competitive lease price to begin with is something that is very important to not only getting good tenants to begin with and getting as much cash flow as possible out of your property, but also retaining them over the long run. What you want to look at is what the competitive rates are for cost per square foot within your community for the different aspects or different type of space that you might have to lease. Obviously, lease space for retail is going to be at a different price than what lease space for offices or warehouse or manufacturing would be. So each of those within your market, and having someone as a professional such as myself that understands the difference in the markets and can market your property in a way to be able to bring the proper tenant into that particular space. Once you have done so, doing so and making available leases that make it very good for this prospective tenant, that is both fair to the landlord, you, and also the tenant. Something that we're all looking for is a longer term lease, or at least as long as possible. But when you look at that, are we looking at an accelerator clause of having that go up to compensate you for inflation over the years? Or is it something that only goes up every 3 years or every 5 years? So that whole lease policy, as to first retaining and getting the right tenant, and then second, being able to set it up in a lease in a way that's fair to both you and the tenant, are an important aspect and probably one of the most important things you can do up front to be able to retain and get good tenants. Another thing that's very important is to be able to look at the credit worthiness of your tenants and be able to attract ones into your building or into your commercial property that not only are going to be there for a while, but obviously can pay you, because cash flow not received is not helping you, and it's adding to your overall costs if you have tenants that don't fulfill their lease and you have to go to court and you have to do things to collect all the time. That's really not what we're looking for. So looking at having good credit-worthy tenants and making sure to have a competitive pricing policy, and then a lease that's in place that makes sense for both you and the tenant, are all aspects that really can help you to be successful in your commercial real estate properties. The other thing that's important is providing incentives to be able to get them in the door to begin with, and also to re-up their lease. When you start, sometimes you might have to give a 1 or 2 month free lease to a prospective tenant or someone that you're looking to have renew their lease, in order to compensate them for the move that they might need to make within the property, or to your property, or the additional idea of maybe putting new carpet or doing additional build out, or creating the opportunity for there to be retention of that tenant by doing work to the property. When we look at the lease renewal, many times that is an important aspect where it becomes a burden for the tenant to move. So it really makes sense for you to put your best foot forward on both terms of a prospective lease, and also by trying to provide an incentive if you need to be able to retain that tenant. When we look at other things that are involved with retaining and keeping good tenants, it's having a maintenance schedule and repairs on the property, where that property is always maintained in good operating order. They don't have to worry about days when the air conditioner doesn't work, or holes in the parking lot or chuck holes in the entryway or anything that might deter their clients or the tenant from having enjoyment and being as effective as possible in conducting their business in your commercial real estate facility. When we look at um, that maintenance and repair policy, many times it does make sense to have a property manager on board that takes care of that for you, especially if you're a out of town landlord, or if you're looking to do more of a hands off approach to commercial real estate investing. Also, communicating with your tenant is very important. That's where a manager can help, but also if you are managing the property yourself, make sure to talk to the tenants and keep in touch with them as to what their concerns are about the building, how things are going with them and with their business. That way, it helps you in multiple ways. One, it's a partnership, and they realize when you're asking how their business is and how they're doing from time to time, that partnership aspect comes across to them that you really care about the success of their business. It also, in a selfish way, helps you because it helps you to understand whether they're doing well or not, whether they're having trouble being able to pay their lease payments or not, and how their business is doing, so that you have a little bit of a heads up ahead of time as to whether or not they're looking to renew that lease or stay in your commercial property. The other thing is you need to address any concerns that the tenant brings to you on a timely basis. So if they have a concern about maybe another person that's occupying the space next to them within your commercial property, or any aspect of maintenance or anything that you can have, an effective way of addressing for the tenant, doing those things up front makes it a lot easier for you to be able to renew that lease down the road, and also for them to maybe be able to be a good referral source for you of a different prospective tenant to be able to take a space if one of the other spaces within your commercial property become available. Also, being flexible on the terms of your lease. If somebody's looking for a 5 year or a 3 year lease, and you normally would do 5 or 10 years, which obviously, as we talked about, you want as much certainty in your cash flow as possible. Many times, being more flexible gives you the opportunity to be able to keep your property full and to be able to address the specific concerns of a tenant, where they might be willing to pay a little bit more in the future to be able to get a little more flexible terms to begin with. Also, tailoring clauses within the lease to their specific needs, especially if you have multiple properties or multiple suites within a particular commercial property. Being able to tailor the potential of their business growing, of them needing different types of space, or just needing clauses within the lease that would benefit both you and the prospective tenant. Also, one of the things that we look at is what they call build out, or what you do to attract a tenant to begin with. And again, as I had covered earlier, the ability to do additional build out to be able to retain a tenant. So say you got a 5 year lease, and at the end of that 5 years, the carpets are worn, and they're asking you to do some things like put new carpet in and do additional build out, or so that they can better utilize the space. Maybe need to take an office that's too big and make it 2 offices, or take out a wall and what was an office, make it a conference room. Things that you can do from time to time to enhance the enjoyment of the tenant of the property are a very important aspect of being able to enhance your property, potentially enhance the longer term value of your property, and at the same time be able to retain tenants. The other thing you want to do is look at exterior improvements to the property from time to time. Being able to put paint, as I discussed earlier, looking at parking lot enhancements, striping, sealing the parking lot, making sure to do timely maintenance on the roof, on the HVAC systems. Things such as that are all important aspects to being able to keep your good tenants. Another aspect is showcasing your property and being able to do it and make it so that people not only know where your tenants are and have signage and things such as that for the tenants, but also the opportunity to be able to show your properties to other prospective tenants by making it available to people know at the local Chamber of Commerce with the Economic Development Corporation. Just making sure that your property is well known within the community and that you can retain and attract the best possible tenants is an important aspect of this retention of your tenants at longer term. How do you measure your improvements that you've made as to whether or not it makes sense or not to do so? That cost benefit analysis of what the extra rents that you might receive are, what the extra value that it might add to the property is also an aspect that many times is hard for an owner of a commercial real estate property to know and to be able to, look at the pros and cons of. Many times the cash flow analysis of what it costs you versus what the additional rent that you might get are not going to be the only factors that you want to look at. Of course, we want to be able to pay for those renovations and those alterations that are made for specific tenants. And we want to know that down the road, we're going to have other tenants that might benefit also in the future from whatever we're doing to the property. But it's also important to look at what it's going to do to the overall value of the property longer term. Improving the cosmetics on the outside and the inside of the property many times will improve the overall value of the property, whether it really cash flows and the additional monies that you spend on the property and the enhancement you make to the property, whether they actually are paid for in a short period of time or not, it can in many cases be able to improve the value of your property. I hope today's lesson on retention of tenants has been helpful. If you have, again, ideas for future topics, like this one was brought to my attention by one of our listeners, please let us know, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you get the opportunity to be able to see these videos as soon as they come out. And besides liking it, also comment and let us know what some of the best renovations that you've made to commercial properties over the years have been, what you have personally experienced in being able to, the best ways to be able to get and retain good tenants have been. And, let's all try to learn from each other. That's all what Be the 90 is about. The opportunity for us to be able to interact as a real estate community, all investing in commercial real estate and helping each other to get the best outcomes and make the most money and cash flow possible. Thank you again for listening and have a great day.